Well, hello everyone. My name is Coach Stu. I'm the Chief Visionary Officer for the Infinity Key. And today I want to try and break down a very interesting video that I just finished watching, and I thought it was fantastic. It's all about Vision 2030 and Taiwan's goal to become an English bilingual speaking country by the year 2030. It's a subject near and dear to my heart. And if you'll bear with me, I'm going to try and create this video and go over another video that I just watched, and we'll break it down and discuss it in some great detail. So yes, first of all, let's try and share my screen here and see how this works. Yes, I'll just move myself out of the way here. So yeah, I do have a Vision 2030 for Taiwan, a blueprint for success. Some of the goals of my blueprint are to completely change the education paradigm and transition from teaching to coaching. I also hope to use infinite game theory practices to help motivate and track progress. And in so doing, I strongly believe I can raise test scores by 25 to 50% in 80% less time. So yes, with the Infinity Key, you can become a confident and professional user of English. But let's get on to the video that I was watching today. So just got to share my screen with, let's close this PowerPoint for a moment. And yes, here's the video that we're talking about. It's from Startup Taiwan. There's been some very interesting videos. They've interviewed Elias Eck from Inspire and Eddie of Eddie's Cantina, how to start up a restaurant in Taiwan. And but today they're interviewing somebody I've never met. I've contacted with her on LinkedIn, and we tried to set up a meeting, but she was in the process of retiring from her professor job. It's Professor Chung, and she's been here for a long time, as you'll see from this video. Anyway, we're going to just start the video. And then I'll stop it and break in with my thoughts and ideas on what's being discussed. So yes, here we go. Startup Taiwan, foreigners, business guys.
Check the mic and make sure it sound right, boys.
What's up, what's down, what is going on around? This is Startup Taiwan, Foreigners Business Guide. I'm Paulo Leasing, founder of MillionDC.com. This YouTube channel and podcast are offshoot of my book, Startup Taiwan, Foreigners Business Guide, aimed at helping foreigners start their business here in Taiwan. So leave those questions in the comment section below. Enough about me. Let me talk about our very special guest, Professor Karen Chung from the US. Professor has been in Taiwan for more than 30 years and has so far devoted most of her time as a professor at the National Taiwan University. Professor Karen teaches English, linguistics, and phonetics with specializations in English listening skills, pronunciation, and poetry. She also co-hosts an English teaching radio program called Ivy League Analytical English. Professor Karen speaks English, Mandarin Chinese, German, and Spanish. Professor Chung finished her BA in East Asian Languages from the University of Minnesota, MA in East Asian Studies from Princeton University, and PhD in Linguistics from Leiden University. Professor.
So we can see that Professor Karen Chung is probably one of the keenest minds on learning English as a second language here in Taiwan. Princeton University, she has her doctorate. She's been in Taiwan since the 90s, it sounds like, since the early 90s, possibly even the late 80s, and she's multilingual. This podcast is going to try and draw out of Professor Chung, I guess it is Dr. too, what's needed for Taiwan to realize the goal of Vision 2030. So let's have a listen to what Professor Chung has to say.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
First question, what's your Taiwan connection? How did you get in here?
Well, I was always interested in languages because of my father. He spoke to me in German when I was little. And then I started studying other languages in high school. Actually, we had German in school as well, which was unusual for the US. But then
We could fast forward a little bit through this bio stuff.
team, and I had found my language. I knew that Chinese was my language. So I started to come to Taiwan to study at the visits, and there was like Chinese.
I want to get to the meat.
Okay. I always thought that you're the best resource person to talk about the government's plan to make Taiwan a bilingual country. That is speaking in Mandarin and English by 2030. And so far, we are less than 9 years from it. Do you think this plan is still possible or attainable?
I think that we're kind of jumping ahead of ourselves here by even asking this question of making Taiwan into a bilingual country. Well, it already is multilingual with all its dialects and native languages and so forth. But first of all, Taiwan does not have an official language in the first place. To say that English is going to be a second official language is a mistake from the beginning because we don't have a first official language.
Okay, so all apologies to Professor Chung, but I think she's engaging in semantics here. Vision 2030 is specifically about creating an English-speaking culture in Taiwan, creating a culture of English in Taiwan. Yes, we can argue that there is no official language. We can argue about all the Aboriginal languages, the First Nation people languages that are present on the island. Taiwanese, of course, being a language that many people use. But I think it's a bit disingenuous to try and obfuscate the question here with this digression that Dr. Chung goes on. Let's just accept that Vision 2030 is about creating an English culture for Taiwan. Okay?
Mandarin is widely spoken, but it's not actually legally an official language. A second is, before we say we're going to do this and we're going to do that, we're going to use legislation to make English another official language. We first have to ask ourselves, what's a good way to learn English? Normally in education, we don't use legislation. We don't use laws with punishments and everything else to teach people.
Okay, but we do use laws, right? We pass and fail students. They have laws of the classroom, right? If you don't study, you don't pass, and then you fail, and all of that. So, and how curriculums are set are handed down from the government. So again, I'm a little confused with where she's going, but okay, let's keep listening.
First step is education. And I think that step has largely been missed in this whole process.
Wow. So are you, so if I may reword it a bit, are you saying that there are specific steps that the government needs to undertake before realizing that Taiwan, Taiwan could, at least the Taiwanese could speak the English language, regardless of whether this is an official language or not? Because so far that I have been here in Taiwan, I have met a lot of Taiwanese who actually speaks good English.
I've been here 20 years. There are some very competent English users in Taiwan. But let's pop out of this for a second. And well, you know what? Yeah. Let's pop out of this for a second. I'm going to stop the share, and I'm going to reshare and come back to my PowerPoint here. We're going to take a look at this slide here. So this is a little graph my partner and I put together about the TOEIC scores for educators, for the junior and senior high school English teachers in the Taiwanese education system over the last 7 years. And we can see that their average score is between 571 and 594, 595 at its peak. So a 24 point variance. But in fact, the law states that to be an English teacher in Taiwan, you need to score a 750 on the TOEIC test. And we can see that the educators themselves are way behind the mark on that. So as far as legislating laws, they're missing out on that. Okay, let's go back to our video.
That's good. Yeah, it's getting better and better, I think, especially since Taiwan is internationalizing more and people are having more contact with foreigners and it's kind of pushing them to practice. And then there's the internet. That has all helped.
Okay, there was a key word that she used, pushing themselves to practice. Okay, we're going to refer to that later on, but just keep listening to how often Professor Chung uses the word practice and how rarely she uses the word study.
But we are still missing a big step. It's sort of like saying, I have set a goal by the year 2030, I am going to build a skyscraper. Now, is that realistic? Am I going to make my goal? Well, first of all, I better take a course in architecture and engineering. I don't have those. How am I going to build a building if I haven't taken architecture and engineering and math and everything else? So the steps you need to get there, before you say, I'm going to do this, you have to figure out, well, how am I going to do this? And that's pretty much missing. So I will jump ahead. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I think if I've read some of the steps that are the steps that they would undertake, it includes having English TV shows, so that it's going to be so that people will be comfortable with listening and and watching English TV shows, and so that it will also be used in normal conversations. Do you think this is enough as well?
I think what the host is trying to get at is there was a lot of money allocated to, I think it was the public television system, to create English programming. And then that created a lot of infighting because the public television system is not supposed to be beholden to any government entity. They're an objective voice. And so a lot of board members quit, and there's like just craziness that happened over at the public television system. So far, what I've heard, the government is actually doing, their actual plan is to create curriculum in high schools that is taught in English. So like history and geography and algebra being taught in English. Now, I also have lots of friends with children here, and some of them are going to these special high schools, and the parents are beside themselves with rage and anger because the teachers themselves, all they're doing is copying pages and pages, reams and reams of Wikipedia. Their English themselves, as we saw from the earlier slide, their English is not competent enough to teach in English. And so far, this is the government's fix-it, or their blueprint for Vision 2030. And it's just more of the same, inept, stumbling over themselves, trying to achieve a goal, but using archaic methodology and philosophy. But let's see what Professor Chung has to say.
Well, I think we already have more English television shows than we could watch in 15 lifetimes. Anybody who has Netflix, you have as much English TV as you want. And you don't even need Netflix. If you don't want to spend money, you go to YouTube.
Or bflix.to, bflix.to. First drop of a hint for you people that want to practice your English. I've discovered bflix.to, and it has everything that you could possibly want, including all the Netflix shows. But you can go back and watch shows from the 60s and 70s, movies from the 50s. It's got everything you could possibly want. bflix.to, a streaming service out of Tokyo. But we're getting on to something. And Dr. Chung is going to talk a lot about the importance of listening here. So listen.
There's so much English there that you could never ever even scratch the surface. So that was not really the point. I'll add another point. I don't have a TV. A lot of people don't even have TVs anymore, just like they don't have landline telephones anymore. It's kind of old technology. So that's also starting from the wrong end. In Chinese, they say, they start from the end and try to get back to the beginning of what they were supposed to do. I will just give away sort of like the whole point of what I'm kind of dancing around right now. And that is the one thing that's missing from English education is listening.
Bingo, it's listening. The least developed skill in every single student I've had over the last 20 years. Whenever you watch HBO on your television, you have Chinese subtitles. Same when you go to Weishou to watch a movie, Chinese subtitles. You're often laughing at the joke before the actor makes the joke because you've read it. And if you're doing that, you're thinking in Chinese, you're not listening to the English. Also, teachers will speak to you in slow, rambling ways, patterns, and choose simple vocabulary to talk to you. So you don't actually get a natural listening experience. But let's listen to the expert. She does know what she's talking about when it comes to listening, but I am going to come back around to that, circle back around to it later on.
We have almost no listening training at all.
Bingo.
And it's funny because if you ask any Taiwanese or any Chinese speaker, imagine now that you were teaching a foreigner Chinese. How are you going to do it? Are you going to whip out a book and say, here, look, these are the 4 tones, read them to me? And then they all laughed. They said, of course not. I said, well, then what would you do? They said, well, I would pronounce each word clearly, ma, ma, ma. And then I would have the student repeat after me. I go, right. Why don't you do that for English?
Another good example is Taiwanese itself. There is no written form of Taiwanese, but yet millions of people on the island speak Taiwanese. How did you learn Taiwanese? Through your ears, not through your eyes. Okay, so the point that Professor Chung and I am making is that listening is the key pathway for second language learning. It's so important, and we will circle back around to this again later.
Do you think that Chinese is so special and so different that you only need to use listening to learn Chinese? You don't need it to learn English?
Every language.
Every language actually is pretty much the same. You start
Absolutely.
with listening. You don't have that sound in your head, you have no sense of what is correct. You will put together some crazy sentences from your knowledge of grammar and vocabulary. My example from Chinese is usually, 我的衣服穿的里头在外头. Like my clothes, I have worn them with the inside out, which makes sense in English, but that's not how you say it in Chinese. It's 我的衣服穿在了. So,
okay, I guess in a ham-fisted way, what we're trying to talk about here is using translation, using expressions and idiom that is works one way in one language, but if you use direct translation, it's going to, as the Australians say, end up playing Chinese whispers. You just confuse and befuddle the messaging. Yeah, so, but translation is its own problem. We're still trying to talk about how important listening is.
if you were just putting together your own sentences from the bits and pieces that you have memorized by heart for the test, you're going to put together crazy sentences that no English speaker is going to understand, at least without a lot of thinking.
How are you? I am fine, thank you. How are you? Memorized answers. This is what the majority of Taiwanese people use in English. You step outside the bounds of that memorized patois that they have, then they're lost. And once they get lost, the fear starts to set in. We'll talk more about fear later. But on with Professor Chung. She knows what she's talking about.
In addition, our brain has two systems, System 1 and System 2. System 1 is the unconscious brain that does things automatically, like getting up and brushing your teeth and getting dressed. You don't think much about it. System 2 is your calculus brain, and that requires a lot of conscious effort. And after you've done about half an hour of calculus, Paulo, how do you feel?
Oh, it's going to be tiring, I suppose.
I think another way to talk about this is the autonomic and the sympathetic nervous system. The heartbeat, the lungs, that's the autonomic nervous system. You don't need to tell your heart to beat or your lungs to expand and contract. It does that automatically. Whereas if you have to figure out how much change you're supposed to give somebody when paying a bill, when they're paying a bill or something, you have to use the calculating part of your brain. Here's something that she's not going to talk about. Language, your native tongue is actually like the heartbeat, like the lungs breathing in and out. For a native English speaker, we don't have to think about what verb tense to use when constructing a sentence. It just automatically comes out, autonomically comes out. Chinese, for example, you don't have to think about what tone to use When you're writing, the stroke pattern, you don't have to think, oh, is it left to right, top to bottom. It just flows automatically. Your native language is automatic. You don't have to think about it. You don't have to do anything. My favorite Chinese saying is "无为而治," the great Lao Tzu philosophy of doing nothing but being successful. And your native language is such an achieved goal of 无为而治. You do nothing and you're successful with your communication. How do we then get a second language to achieve that same goal of it's just automatic? And that is what my Vision 2030 blueprint is all about. But I talk too much. Let's listen to Professor Chung some more.
Yeah, you feel pretty exhausted because whenever we're using our analytical conscious brain, it uses up a lot of brain resources and it's exhausting and it is not fast. It's careful and it can be very precise and logical, but it is very slow and it takes up lots and lots of energy. And basically the way English is taught in Taiwan, students are taught to use this very, very resource clogging system to try to speak a language without.
Well, memorization, I think, is what they're tasked with, to memorize 1,000 words, to memorize massive amounts of grammar rules. Using rote learning has been successful in most cases in Taiwan. If we don't have to go far back in history to see how long ago Taiwan was considered a very poor country. It was an agrarian culture, farming, fishing. The best you could hope for was civil service. Growing up in the 60s in Canada, made in Taiwan meant it was going to break and you'd have to replace it. But fast forward 20, 30 years, and Taiwan is now a burgeoning democracy, the 22nd strongest economy in the world, given all the political problems that we face and not being able to join international organizations, and yet still very successful, leading the world in chip technology, climbing the ladder quickly on biotech and BT, as they call it, biotechnology. Our scientists are among the best in the world. And why is that? Because rote learning lends itself to science. 2 + 2 is 4. You can memorize 4. E = mc squared equals. There's a one answer kind of aspect to science. But there's many ways to construct a sentence in English. English is not science. English is art. And to approach art, and she'll talk a little later about learning to play violin, learning to play a sport, learning to play basketball. If you're too afraid to take a chance because you might miss, too afraid to make a mistake, I digress. We're talking about fear. Practice is the way to improve any art-based subject. So for Taiwan to achieve its goal of Vision 2030, the first thing it has to do is realize that language such as English is, especially English, is art. And the only way to achieve progress, or the only way to progress, is through experience, through trial and error. There's a whole other set of problems involved with accepting that, but accept it, Taiwan must. Language is art. Dr. Chung?
Without having had enough sounds in their ears to know what sounds correct, they just put things together by pure logic, and the logical brain is slow and it doesn't have good sounds backing it up. That's basically the problem here as I see it.
So I think you mentioned already my next question, which is an observation that many Taiwanese are actually very good at taking English exams, especially for those who wanted to go abroad for their for further studies. And
yeah, I'm going to stop you right there, dude. No, I'm not going to let you get away with that. Well, let's go back to the PowerPoint here. We already saw. Hey, how do I get back to my PowerPoint? I guess I got to stop share. And then I got to look over my camera here, reshare. Here we are. So we saw how the teachers are doing here. Let's look at the students. So here we have 15 years of test scores, and we can see it's just a smidge below the teachers. Now, granted, that's the TOEIC test, but I think the TOEIC test is the best measure of English because it's the final test that everybody has to take. It's the one that goes on your CV. You can create your own graphs. You can do your own research. Look at the TOEFL test. Look at the IELTS test scores. Spread it out over the years, and you'll see it's not even close, and it's going to be a pretty flat line. There is zero improvement. Einstein said the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. And for 20 years, I've been fighting against this in Taiwan. They keep doing the same thing. They keep getting the same result. And year after year, study, memorize, test. Yeah, you'll never. The premise of this video we're watching: is it possible for Vision 2030 to succeed? And they're trying to set it up that it is impossible. It's definitely impossible unless a major paradigm shift. Let's get back to my first slide. Change the education paradigm. It is a must if we're going to be successful. Okay, let's get back to our video.
And there's actually a data to back this up.
There's not.
And I think what you're trying to say is that to bridge this being good at taking exams into making more Taiwanese speak the language is being able to integrate the listening skills into the system. But I'm still a little bit confused on how you could do this. Does this mean we need to add this specific training in the whole English language learning curriculum in the schools?
Short answer, yes. But I think we need to back up still further. And that is, before you undertake anything in life, you have to figure out what your goal is. And if you want to learn any...
Okay, hang on a second. Now, goal setting, yes, is important. But we're getting away from the topic at hand that this video is supposed to be about, and that's Vision 2030. The goal is clear: an English bilingual country by the year 2030. That's the goal. Professor Chung is going to talk about all different goals coming up here, but I don't want you to lose sight of what the goal was supposed to be of this video, and that is how does Taiwan achieve English bilingualism by 2030?
Skill, like if you want to take up the violin, why are you taking up the violin? Do you want to become a concert violinist, or is it just a hobby? Or do you want to play with some friends because they also do music? You have to decide ahead of time, what is your goal in doing this? Is your goal to pass the test? Is your goal to chat with friends on the internet? Is your goal to go abroad to study? Depending on your goal, you're going to take completely different approaches to studying. If your goal is to pass the test, and I would say that in a huge majority of cases in Taiwan, people mostly learn English in order to pass the test, in order to not fail their classes in school. Once your goal is set as passing a test, okay, so you take your test for senior high school, you take your test for university, you're in, you're done. You don't have to work on your English anymore because you've accomplished your goal, it's behind you. And no part of that goal was to really communicate orally with other English speakers, native or non-native.
To reiterate, she's talking about personal goal setting, and I tuned into this video because it claimed to be talking about Vision 2030. I'm constantly scouring the internet for new and relevant information to a cogent plan for Vision 2030, and I find nothing. And again, I find myself being a little bit let down by this video because it keeps steering away from the thesis that it's supposed to be exploring.
Since that was not part of your goal, of course, you can't do it. You spent your study time studying scores for Beethoven's Midnight Sonata. You keep studying the sheet music, you read it every day. And then you jump into an orchestra and you can't play it, and you're shocked. Why can't I play this? Well, you've never practiced. So it's perfectly obvious, number one, if you've got to set your...
She said it there again. Practice. Remember, not study. She talked about you studied the sheet music, but you can't play because you've never practiced. Very important point. Extremely important point.
And depending on your goal, you're going to approach it differently. The approach that's being used now is okay for the kind of test that's given here in order to pass the test and then be done with English.
But not okay to achieve Vision 2030. Absolutely not okay to achieve that goal.
But in order to live abroad, you're going to have to sit down and practice your piano every day, or you're not going to be able to play the sonata. That much is clear. And then I'll go on to the second part of your question, and that is, do we have to really change what we're doing? The answer is obviously yes.
Obviously.
You cannot expect to keep on doing the same thing you've been doing for decades and decades and decades. This goes back to before, certainly before the Chinese retaking of Taiwan, back to the Japanese occupation period.
Okay. Yes, we have to change what we're doing, but it goes back further than the Japanese occupation period. This goes back to Confucius and his contemporaries. Okay, Lao Tzu, Kongzi, and there's a big one in there that a lot of people forget about, Han Feizi. I'm sorry if my tone isn't as good as Dr. Chung, but basically there are three, the pyramid of Taiwan culture. It's Lu Jia, Fa Jia, Dao Jia. Lu Jia from Kongzi, respect for elders, for teachers, and such like that. Dao Jia from Lao Tzu, the path of least resistance. Taoism comes from that. But the middle one there, Fa Jia, I'm sorry, my tone isn't right, but anybody, what that basically means is that mistakes are shameful, mistakes should be punishable. And this is 3,000 years old. It predates Taiwan, it predates the Japanese influence on the island of Taiwan, or Formosa at the time. It predates the PRC, it predates the Boxer Rebellion, it predates so many dynasties. It's at least 3,000 years old. And that has been handed down from generation to generation to generation. And it is the main reason why, one, English is failing in Taiwan, as we saw from the graphs I showed earlier. The fear of making a mistake is so ingrained in the Taiwanese mind that to take a chance and blow a grammar point or to use the wrong pronunciation or the wrong word is akin to a loss of face. And all Taiwanese people will move mountains to save face. But at the same time, it's also directly responsible for Taiwan's success. I spoke earlier about how it's moved from an agrarian culture to the 22nd strongest economy in the world. And that's on the back of this fear of mistakes, because it has created the best students in the world, among the best. Here's an interesting thing. If you're going to name the top 4 countries with the best academic students, the best STEM students, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, am I wrong in suggesting that it would be Japan, South Korea, China, and Taiwan? Not a stretch, right? Those are probably the 4 best mathletes in the world. They're also, coincidentally, the 4 countries that probably spend the most money and time, more importantly, time on trying to learn English. And a little research will bear out, they're also the 4 countries that do the worst in English. Science, yes, all 4 countries have their economy has blossomed on the back of science. But go and tell a Taiwanese parent that their daughter should be playing guitar and not studying math. That teacher will be fired and ostracized from society. Art is not valued. It is not taught. STEAM, everybody's scrambling to figure out how to incorporate STEAM into the curriculum, arts-based training. And it's directly responsible for language training, because language, as I said earlier, is art. So yes, while science has pulled Taiwan out of the rice paddies, it's also and it's on the back of Han Feizi and the fear of making mistakes. It's also chiefly responsible for the lack of progress with English.
The methods that have been used since then have basically not changed. You sit down and learn things through the
Thousands.
textbook. Very often, first of all, it's because the tests don't require anything else. Second, the teachers themselves are not comfortable with doing oral work and listening.
We saw why with the graph I showed earlier.
So they pass on, they're actually quite afraid of it.
Han Feizi.
And they pass this fear on to their students. So anytime there's anything having to do with listening or speaking, the students go like, ah, and they will say, oh, my listening is very poor. And that's a very poor excuse. Nobody is born with poor listening. All that is going on is you haven't practiced.
Practice listening. Now she's going to make a suggestion here, but I'm going to up the ante.
Why haven't you practiced? Well, I'm sorry, it goes back to the way we're teaching. And very specifically, you said we have to change, yes. And my suggestion, I've written about it in several articles, is for every class period, which is usually 50 minutes, 10 minutes of it should be devoted to listening practice. You listen, you listen, you listen, and you repeat, and you practice also speaking. Doesn't matter, you know, who, what level, who's teaching it, whether the English teacher's English is really good or not, it doesn't matter. You just have 10 minutes of every single class hour where you are practicing listening. And if we do that, starting from tomorrow, Taiwan's English will become better immediately.
Okay, yes, it will become better immediately because you're using English on a daily basis in an experiential way of practicing. However, class time should be devoted to advancing the students' progress. And how you do that is by pushing them comfortably outside their comfort zone. Why waste precious minutes, 50 minutes a day with 40 kids? You get a minute per kid. You know, by the time you settle them down, you get a minute per kid. Assign it as homework. Watch 20 minutes, not 10, 20 minutes, the average length of an American sitcom every day, a Netflix show. Now what should I choose? Well, first of all, don't assign today class, you must watch this link, because every person in that class is different. They're unique, they're individuals. Have them watch something that is interesting to themselves. Some people might want to watch Friends. Other people don't dig that stuff and they want to watch documentaries. Some people's language level is too high for Friends and it's just boring to them. It's not, they're being entertained, but they're not being pushed outside their comfort zone. So first, when you choose your source listening material, choose something interesting to you. Secondly, what is your comprehension level? After you watch it, is it, I understood 20%, I understood 50%, I understood 80%, I understood all of it. And my rule of thumb here is the 20-80 rule. If you understand less than 20%, consider it too difficult and choose something where you can understand north of 20%. Likewise, if you're understanding north of 80%, it's too easy. Choose something a little more difficult. Keep raising the bar for yourself. If sitcoms are constantly in that 80 to 85% range of comprehension, watch documentaries. If documentaries are too easy, remove the visual. Listen to podcasts. So you have to, it forces you to listen. You can keep achieving higher and higher levels of source material choices, but don't use class time for it. Assign it as homework and log the minutes. I'll get into logging the minutes later on in the experiential tracking algorithms that I'm going to show you later. But yes, she's bang on. She's right that listening is important. It's the most important skill. It is the least developed skill for Taiwanese students. And start today. Start practicing Netflix, bflix.to. I gave you that nugget earlier. YouTube, whatever. The 20-80 rule and personally enjoyable material. It doesn't have to be educational. It just has to be enjoyable and important to you. Personalize it. Okay, let's get on with this. I'm running way too long, way longer than I wanted to. Sorry, but as you can see, quite passionate about this.
Wow. So it's somehow related to what you just mentioned. Back home, I've encountered a lot of people who would actually correct people's grammar. I've experienced this personally, that mid-sentence people would cut me and say, oh, that's not the right grammar. But also living abroad, I realized that grammar sometimes is not the most important thing, because some people are really super smart, but their English is not as good in terms of grammar. But I could understand them, but many people would always say the most brilliant suggestions, brilliant concepts. But even though their English is not, the best, would you say that, as Taiwan wants to achieve a certain level of English fluency, is grammar important?
Yes, of course, grammar is important. So, but I will clarify it a bit. You need to know the basic rules of grammar. In Taiwan, it usually goes into really, really detailed exceptions, and that's the wrong thing to do. You should learn the rules of grammar, because unless you can generalize, you're just going to keep on trying different things and nothing works. So trial and error takes a lot of time and energy, but if you simply learn the rule, then you know what's going on. So yes, grammar is important. But the question is, how much time do we devote to grammar?
Okay, before we get into how much time, let's break that down. Let's break that down. Yes, grammar is important, and she's suggesting you should learn the basic rules of grammar, but not go too deep into it. All right. I came to Taiwan 20 years ago, and I was given an advanced class of children, but advanced class. And you know, I opened up the lesson I'm supposed to teach, and it says, "Okay, you're going to teach modals today." But we teach what now? I have a university degree in theater. I studied Shakespeare, but what was a modal? What was a gerund or gerund? I don't even know how to pronounce it to this day, because I don't care. I learned English grammar by making mistakes. If I said something wrong, I'd be corrected, and I'd say it right, and I'd be corrected until I was saying it right, and it became part of my muscle memory. If you want to study the rules of grammar, I hope you're planning on being a grammar teacher. Otherwise, all you need to do is know the difference between right grammar and wrong grammar. That's all. Just what is it, right or is it wrong? Yesterday I went to the store. Hear the mistake, fix the mistake, speak the corrected version of it. Now, how do you do that? I've already suggested to you one way that you can. What you have to do is build a foundation of what grammar sounds like when it's used properly. You don't have to study the rules of grammar. You just have to listen to grammar being used properly. Now, that suggestion I said about homework, watching a television show or a podcast, listening to a podcast for 20 minutes a day, you're hearing other people use grammar properly. That was another caveat of that. It should be a native speaker. It should be English as the native language. Don't watch anything that is dubbed, or always when choosing source material, you choose stuff from a native speaker's pen or voice, because you can trust it as being grammatically perfect or letter perfect if it's a written source. So listening to friends, all of them are using grammar properly. Maybe not Joey, but I digress. So you're hearing grammar used properly. You're passively building that foundation of what grammar sounds like when used properly. Okay. Now, an even better way to build that foundation is to hear yourself use English with perfect grammar. Now, how can you do that? With the Infinity Key Blueprint for Vision 2030, we show you that on the second day, how you can start hearing yourself speak English with perfect grammar every single day. This is exponentially more beneficial for building that foundation of what grammar sounds like. You can learn to have perfect grammar without ever studying one rule of grammar. You learn what it sounds like to use grammar properly. It takes time, not a lot less time than it takes to study the rules of grammar, because English has a lot of rules of grammar. Oh my, and then there's exceptions to rules. So you study the rules of grammar, and boom, along comes an exception to the rule. It just breaks the rules. You can break the rules of grammar intentionally if you want. The rules of grammar say don't start a sentence with and, but, or because. But you can do it if you want to. And I often do it because I'm a writer. Okay, so yeah, grammar I like to say is like traffic in Taiwan. There's no rules, just suggestions. Drive on this side of the road. Yeah, but I want to go to the 7-Eleven over there. Cross the road, drive up the wrong side of the road. The yellow lines are just suggestions. The roads themselves, just suggestions. Oh, I'm going to park up there by that 7-Eleven. I'm going to drive on the sidewalk. Just a suggestion, right? Stop at the red light. We just suggest you stop at the red light. Grammar's a lot like that too. Okay, you need to look at ebonics. Okay, and rap music, one of the freshest, brightest poetic forms of the language today. And it totally disrupts the rules of grammar, pronunciation, spelling, everything. But it's just as viable a form of English as Shakespeare was. Okay? So when it comes to grammar, learn it passively by listening to what grammar sounds like, either from native speakers or, more importantly, from yourself. And I will go into a little bit of how you do that in a little while.
And how much time do we devote to something else? And basically, I go by the Pareto principle, which says 20% of effort, and then you can actually takes care of 80% of the cases. But in this case, it's 20% of effort spent on grammar, 80% spent on listening and speaking, actually using the language. So of course you learn the rules, but don't spend too much time on it. Put most of your effort into speaking. And if you have reset your goal to want to actually communicate with people, say online, which is so easy now, it's very easy to find people, for example, who want to learn Chinese, you can set up a language exchange. So you can find.
Okay, she just slipped something in there that you had to be listening closely. Devote most of your time to speaking. In my training, of the hundreds of students that I put through my training program, getting them speaking to somebody other than me is like pulling teeth. Practice with, you do have to practice speaking, but why spend money and then wait for the teacher? The teacher is not who you should be practicing speaking with. You have friends. Practice conversation with your friends. Oh, mind blown. Yeah, you're not the only one that needs to practice speaking. Every single one of your friends needs, I'm talking to you high school students, you junior high school students. Everybody needs to practice speaking. Go to lunch with your group of friends and spend 15 minutes of your lunch hour speaking in English. Don't worry about making mistakes, just communicate. The more you do that, the more comfortable and confident you will become. And that filter will start to kick in. The more you're doing the listening exercises for grammar, you'll make mistakes. That's where you're going to make your mistakes. What did you do yesterday? Yesterday I went to basketball practice. Yeah? Yes, coach? Yes, coach. All right, on with Professor Chung.
Find all kinds of ways to actually start speaking. And if you have the chance to actually interact with a human, I think a lot of us are finding now that we actually really crave interactions with other people. You're the first person I've talked to today, but we really crave that. And if we have the chance to use language to communicate better with somebody else, that gives us a huge motivation. Our goal has now changed from passing the test to connecting with another human being and feeling really happy about it. So if we put our emphasis on use, on listening, understanding, practice, okay, here's the next thing, is you cannot expect to just do 2 hours of English a week, maybe 2 to 3 hours. I don't know, it depends on the program.
Okay, yes, now she's getting right into why I started the Infinity Key. You come to English class at the Bushy Band for 2 hours, and then as soon as the class is over, bang, you're back to speaking Mandarin with your friends. You don't touch English again until your next class a week later. Got to use English every day. If you want to achieve the goal of Vision 2030 for Taiwan, we have to get Taiwanese people using English every day. Now we're going to get into time. Time more important than money in this case, but we'll talk about that. But practice English every day. You move forward on your journey towards your goal, which is bilingual, confident professional user of English. Every day you use it, you move forward. Every day you don't, you move back. So if you're going to class on Thursday, and then Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Oh, wait, I'm off the camera. No wonder you're not getting ahead.
And expect to get results from that is just not going to happen.
How about?
Once your goal is to actually learn it well, you'll want to work on it to get better. Sticking at it too long, you'll get exhausted. So just do 15 minutes, 10 to 15 minutes, but do it every single day. As long as you work on it every single day, you're going to keep on progressing. And you will be.
I suggest 60 minutes. 60 minutes for 1 year and you're bilingual. If you use that time wisely. She's going to talk about it taking 10 years, 15 minutes a day. Yeah. Who has that time? 60 minutes a day used wisely, you're bilingual in 1 year.
be surprised at how much you can progress just by doing a little every day. And there's this saying that goes around that people always overestimate what they can accomplish in a day or in a year, but they underestimate what they can accomplish in a few years or 10 years. You'll get a lot done. So if you do that little bit every day, it's always.
Who has 10 years to do this? 1 year, 60 minutes a day. Let me show you how. Whoops.
On your mind every day, you're improving just a little bit. This concept is called Kaizen. In Chinese, it's Gaishan. That means doing a little bit every day to improve. You would improve really fast. And not spend all your time looking at grammar, but you're spending your time actually listening and actually communicating with other people, maybe finding a pen pal, whatever it is you do.
Did you so far in the span that you've been here in Taiwan, do you think that Taiwan made a significant progress in terms of the ability of many Taiwanese to speak English?
I think because of the internet, we are now more open to connecting with people outside of our bubble or outside of our country, outside of our culture. So people are getting a bit braver. And if you get braver, that means you practice more. If you practice more, you will get better. I think for that reason, it has been improving. For example, my classes at Taiwan University, students are more likely to raise their hand and participate, although not everybody does still.
More likely to raise their hand and participate, but not everybody. Okay, Taiwanese people, what did Confucius say about not knowing something? If you don't know something, ask, right? Oh man, I can tell you, I used to, when I was teaching adults in the Bushy Band system, I would tell them at the beginning of class, the last 15 minutes of this 90-minute class will be Q&A. You will ask me questions and I will answer them. The questions should be about your English progress. If you don't have any questions, we will end this class early. Basically, I'm going to steal 15 minutes of your time, of your money. You're paying for a 90-minute class. If you don't have any questions, this will be a 75-minute class. And they never, ever raise their hand. They'd rather throw that money away than lose the face of asking a question. It goes back to Hanfeizi, what I was talking about earlier. Not knowing something, asking a question is intentionally causing yourself to lose face. Now, she's working with university level students, and I will say, if she says some of the students are starting to ask questions, that's great. This is the paradigm shift that I'm talking about. With the Infinity Key training system, every single player of this game will come to their coaching session, not class, but coaching session, with questions ready to ask. In fact, they will compete with their teammates to ask questions because of the limited amount of time you have. Now, we will also show you right quickly, you take this training program for 3 months, then you can go back to your Bushy Band or to your junior high school, and you can steal the teacher's time by asking questions. Every single teacher wants you to ask questions, and you never do. So if you walk into class, you say, hey, teacher, I have these 6 vocabulary words. I did my best to research the meaning of them, but I still don't understand them. Can you explain them to me? It is the teacher's responsibility to explain those words to you, no matter what his lesson plan is. Even if he says, oh, I'll see me after class, he still has to help you. He or she must help you. Learn to ask the 3 secret questions that every teacher must answer for you. And through these 3 questions, your English progress will accelerate beyond any imaginable speed that you can think of, that you can imagine. Asking questions is the key. Asking the right questions is the key to success. I'm happy to see Professor Chung's university level students are asking questions, but as she said, not all of them. I would venture that very few of them do.
They're more willing to share what they think, less afraid of expressing ideas or being criticized by others. So it's still a problem here. But in any case, I think getting kind of past a lot of the shyness is really making the difference. As for the teaching methods, frankly, I do not see a lot of change. It's really up to the students. If they can get over their shyness and get out of practice, they will improve. And we can see the difference there. But as for the education system itself, I have not seen how much change.
No, there isn't. I spoke earlier, what the government's blueprint is to create high schools that teach English only curriculum for all subjects, but they're throwing teachers in that don't speak English at all. So I want to get back to this PowerPoint here. Quickly stop share, reshare, PowerPoint. And we're going to open up this slide here. Okay, cool. Yeah, let's just. All right, so what we got here is, oh, we can make this bigger. There we go. The curriculum has to change. Okay, and what this is the Infinity Key training, language training system. And basically what it is a series of 6 exercises that are done. 4 of them are done daily. 4 of them, the brain trainer, ear yoga, rehearsals, and chats are done daily. And my best drafts and your script prep vocab journal are weekly exercises. If you put 60 minutes a day into this this training program, you are one, and you know, you're starting at the average of what we saw earlier, the 550 TOEIC level. You're 900 TOEIC in 1 year. Now, what we have are active and passive. If you look over to the right here, you'll see here we go. Active and passive. Red is active. Brain trainer, chats, and my best drafts are active application of language skills. Purple is passive acquisition of language skills. And what we're trying to do is create a balance. Okay, so if we look at Anna to date, she's earned 532 points of active and 599 points of passive. So we know right away that Anna, to balance out, needs to work on her active skills. So she needs to do 30 minutes of chat and 30 minutes of brain trainer, and she's going to be close to balanced, right? Then we look at the daily commitment, and this is where I'd like to see the change in the education system from letter grading A, B minus, C plus, F to a pass-fail system. This is, and whenever I talk to bushy bands or I've had job interviews at these private high schools, and I suggest this, and they go, "Wow, your demonstration was amazing. The students stood up and applauded for you at the end of your demo. We've never seen them so engaged." And then we get into the meeting, and I suggest that we do a pass-fail system instead of a letter grading system. And surprise, I'm not offered the job. So pass-fail, how does that work? You get graded on your daily commitments. This is your point system. 1 point equals 1 minute. So, and it's amortized out over the length of your game. So a semester or a school year, you'd have to score in junior high school, I would suggest a 45. That means you're using English for 45 minutes a day. For grade 7 and grade 8, maybe grade 9 to get out of junior high school, we raised that to a 50. Then in senior high school, grade 10 and 11, 55 minutes a day. Grade 12, 60 minutes a day. You put that kind of time into this kind of training, this experiential training that is, and you'd have to have that balance as well, plus or minus 5% active passive balance. That is gamification using infinite game theory of language training. And these 6 exercises, brain trainer, ear yoga, rehearsals, chats, my best drafts, and script prep. After 3 months of playing this game, I will ask you, is this the best way to improve your grammar? You will say yes. Is this the best way to improve your vocabulary? You will say yes. Pronunciation, yes. Reading, yes. Writing, yes. Listening, yes. Speaking, yes. Confidence, yes. Guessing, keyboarding, thinking in English, yes, yes, yes. Because it's experiential learning, it's managing your very valuable commodity of time by breaking it down to how each minute is experienced. Okay, this is the blueprint for Vision 2030 that the government needs to change the laws and adapt to something like this, to experiential learning. Professor Chung, I know you're retired. I know later on in this video, you're going to talk about when he asks you what your favorite game is, you're going to talk how you're interested in watching how games are created. Let's talk about this in more detail, one-on-one. And together, let's lobby the government for real change, because you're passionate and I'm passionate about this. I love your interview, and come back to this, or, the blueprint for Vision 2030. Here's my phone number. How do I get my mouse up here? Here's my phone number, Dr. Chung. Give me a call, email me. We are contacts on LinkedIn. We have spoken in the past. I'm Coach Stuart Glenn. And I think together that we can actually affect real change. And to everybody else that's listening, I hope you enjoyed this breakdown. It was a very, very interesting startup Taiwan. I took some issues with some of it, but for the most part, we're lockstep in sync with each other. We both understand the importance of listening, the importance of practice, and the importance of using your language skills on a daily basis. We, our numbers may vary a little, but I see what she's doing. She's trying to get the ball rolling, and I'm saying, okay, the ball's rolling now. Let's get it rolling down the hill as fast as we can. I make a claim that if you put in 60 minutes a day, your starting point is like a 500 to 550 TOEIC. You put in 60 minutes a day for 1 year, balancing out these training systems, you will be a 900 in a year's time. So if English is important to you and you want to improve quickly, effectively, efficiently, and economically, you got my number. Give me a call, and let's get you training. We'll start you off with a little workshop and see if it's right for you. At the end of the workshop, you'll have the secret sauce. You'll know what you need to do to keep improving your English on a daily basis. Of course, I want you to work with one of our coaches to accelerate that progress and keep pushing you comfortably outside your comfort zone, but you can manage it by yourself. You'll never need another teacher as long as you live, if you just keep experiencing English the way I'm suggesting you do it. Anyway, this is a long video. My throat's getting dry. I want to thank you all for Infinity Key, Chief Visionary Officer, Coach Stu. Thank you, Professor Chung, for your insight. And please leave your comments below. Smash that subscribe button, like, share, do all that stuff, because this message is important. I hope I've helped you see learning language a different way. Anyway, I'll let you go. Thanks. Bye, everybody.